Thanks. Well, American intelligence agencies believe attacks on militants in Syria certainly delayed plans to attack the U.S. and other Western countries. They say American warplanes hit an al-Qaeda-linked group that was known to be building sophisticated bombs. The group also said to be training terrorists for another 9/11 style attack.
The strength of this coalition makes it clear to the world that this is not America's fight alone. Above all, the people and governments of the Middle East are rejecting ISIL and standing up for the peace and security that the people of the region and the world deserve.
President Obama addressing the UN General Assembly today to urge other nations to join in that fight. Dr. Geoffrey Wawro, director of the Military History Center at the University of North Texas and author of a lot of books, including Quicksand, America's Pursuit of Power in the Middle East, which never really has gone all that well. Interesting to see who is in and who is out in these attacks, and I guess the next question is going to be how long they're in for. But the countries that were in, it was carefully pointed out, all Sunni Muslim nations: Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Bahrain.
Yeah, I mean, it's a recognition by these Sunni Arab Gulf nations that, and Jordan, that they are deeply threatened, direly threatened by ISIS, and that they need to become involved. And so this was important to give a fig leaf of legitimacy to the U.S. airstrikes, but let's not kid ourselves. The U.S. is definitely carrying the ball on the airstrikes and Tomahawk strikes against ISIS and the Khorasan group.
Right, and let's talk about that Khorasan group, which is something that people are going, the what? Now, first I had Al-Qaeda, now I've got ISIS or ISIL, and now something called the Khorasan group, which has been around for a while, but we haven't really heard much about it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's just another franchise of Al-Qaeda, and definitely has a safe haven near Aleppo, so it's able to plot. And so I think the idea is to take it out now or try to attrite it now in order to set back its planning. But it's a typical Al-Qaeda franchise that's plotting attacks against the United States. It fits curiously into the overall strategy here, though, because the Khorasan group, the Nusra Front, have collaborated with the so-called Free Syrians against the Assad regime. So now we're striking one of the forces that's fighting the Assad regime, which again complicates the overall strategy.
Right, and may ironically strengthen a guy we want to get rid of, who is Assad. There's a strange competition going on among these groups for recruits, for money, and most frighteningly for attention.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great vacuum has sort of opened in the Arab world as they've sort of cycled through every political alternative since the end of the First World War, really. And now we've seen the failure of the strong men, we've seen the failure of the Arab Spring, and so what next? And so this has freed up all of these individual groups and militias to pursue their own political utopia. And the U.S. really is caught in the middle because of the reach of these terrorist groups and their ability to strike the homeland.
Right, and while a lot of these countries have nominal parliaments, interestingly, the ones that joined this coalition, almost without exception, are kingdoms.
Yeah, and they're the ones.
They're the most threatened, probably.
Yeah, most threatened, because the idea of ISIS is to seek a caliphate that will embrace the whole Muslim world and certainly will seek the oil resources of the Persian Gulf.
Yeah.
So these are the ones that really need to be involved, and finally they are.
Most overused term in journalism, certainly on cable TV these days, is boots on the ground. And you've said airstrikes, you know, just lobbing missiles and dropping bombs is not going to dislodge these guys. They're going to keep coming back and keep multiplying and keep coming back up out of the ground. So the question is, whose boots have to be on the ground?
Well, I mean, I think that's the president's idea, is that this is a fight that the United States can't win. It has to be won by people on the ground who actually live there, who have to purge this cancer from their midst. And so the boots on the ground are going to be the Peshmerga, the Kurdish troops, the local troops, Jordanians, Saudis, whoever's required, but then more importantly, Syrians and Iraqis themselves. I mean, the whole idea now is to sort of rebuild these Iraqi brigades, make them capable of taking on ISIS. And then I think it's a bit of a pipe dream to assume that the Free Syrian Army will emerge as a credible rival. It would be better to strengthen Assad, use him as the anvil to crush these guys, but we've sort of thrown away that option because of our attempt to, you know, say that we need to replace him because of his assault on his own people.
Yeah, and the ones who have been reliable allies through this whole thing have been the Kurdish militias. They're called the Peshmerga. They are fierce fighters. They want something in return. And the question is, should they get it? If they prove to be reliable in stopping or eliminating ISIS, they get what they want, which is their own country. They don't want to be part of Iraq anymore.
I think that's already happening. I mean, this is becoming, it's a de facto state, and it's going to become a legal state at some point. It complicates the thing immensely because of the Iranian, Syrian, and Turkish interest in the whole issue of Kurdistan. If they get a Kurdish state in Iraq, will it expand into the other areas? And that's what makes it so controversial at this point. But they've proved to be a redoubtable and loyal ally, and the U.S., I think, is not going to try to turn back the clock on this.
Okay. We've got a link to you and your books on myfoxdfw.com. Thank you so much for the insight. We appreciate it, as always. After hitting new highs last week, took a couple of bad days in a row on Wall Street.